Hello, everybody. Thank you for showing up. It's always wonderful to be with you. This weekend, I happened upon a YouTube live stream which presented the Dalai Lama, and he was giving a lecture to a group of Harvard students on spirituality and leadership. And I noticed that every once in a while he would stop and he was searching for an English word he couldn't quite grasp. And he turned to the left, and on the table beside him was a little black box, and was connected by intercom to a person in another room. And this person would feed the Dalai Lama the English word, and he would use it and go on with his lecture. And I thought this process was pretty symbolic of how you and I receive guidance when we need it. If you're giving a lecture or having a discussion or teaching a class or doing a healing or creating or doing anything inventive or of service, you may not have the capacity to do it all, but if you need help, there's a higher voice. There's a source of wisdom that will fill in the blank and give you exactly what you need to make your presentation or your service perfect. Now, A Course in Miracles calls this voice the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is the voice for God that speaks to us directly and intimately in language we understand that enables us to fulfill our function in the world. And there's a prayer in the text of the Course that capsulizes this. And it says, I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, for he, she, it, who sent me will direct me. Wow. So this is promising that if you are called upon to do something in the world that's either fun or challenging, and you're not quite sure if you can master it all, or you're nervous in any way, or anxious in any way, this is the promise that Great Spirit, Holy Spirit, will fill in any blanks and give you exactly what you need. And a lot of my coaches, people who graduate from my coach training, say that, I was doing a coaching session, I got a little stuck, and I just called on Spirit, said, would you please help me fill in the blank? And an idea came to me, an image came to me, the word came to me that was exactly what I needed to have an excellent coaching session. So Spirit is graceful. Spirit is generous. Spirit does not expect us to do it all ourselves. Spirit will fill in any blanks. Now, some people call this channeling. That's just one word. I like to call it inspiration. I believe that my books are inspired in the sense that I get an idea, and it's my job to flesh it out in language so it makes sense to readers. I don't get the whole book. I get idea, and then I have to fill in the blanks. And so it's kind of a co-creative process, you might say. And I never consider myself an author. I think of myself more as a recording secretary. I think that inspiration comes to me and I carry the ball, and that's the way it comes to the world. And really, I'm not special. I'm not unique. Any person who's an artist or teacher or creator or healer will acknowledge that they don't do it all themselves, that there is some kind of force or power or wisdom or love that they hold the hand of, so to speak, and good things come to them and they just pass them along to the world. The great inventor Nikola Tesla, he came up with AC electricity, X-rays, the fluorescent light, wireless communication, the radio, and much, much more. This was one of the great inventors of all time. And he said that his ideas came to him in a flash, an image of a motor crashed into his brain. In fact, one day he was outside and he drew it in the sand. It was so clear. And he said, by the time I get to the laboratory, it's already filled out. And my job is just to flesh it out with material means. But the idea came intact from heaven, you might say, from God, from higher power. Now, people used to call this the muse. Musicians and artists and inventors say, well, my muse was speaking to me. And in a way, it's true. In a way, it's true. However, that muse is really an intermediary for higher power, for the great God of all that is. That, God is the source of all healing. Even Jesus said, it is not I, but the Father within me who does the work. Jesus did not identify himself as a healer. He was the vessel through which the healing power of the universe came. And he said, even greater things than I shall you do, if you are willing to be open, to be guided, and have that person in a little black box speak to you. I used to study with a lovely Muslim teacher. Her name was Ishvara. And people would thank her for their healing, for their illumination. She would say, all praises are due to Allah. All praises are due to Allah. And so it is. Now, you don't have to be a great healer or inventor to be guided. We're all guided. In fact, if you need specific information, it will come. I don't consider myself a psychic, but I do get impressions once in a while that make sense. And one night I was teaching a yoga class many years ago. And after class, I and a couple of ladies were standing in the parking lot. We're talking about the class. And the subject for that night's discussion was reincarnation. I'm not an expert on it, but I just gave the yoga philosophy of it. And I said, well, let us say that, just for example, that you came into this life to be with Herman and Sophie. I just picked names out of the air. I wasn't really thinking about it. And the lady Blanche, she says, well, Herman is my father and Sophie is my sister. Now, I guarantee you, I didn't sit there thinking, well, what could this lady's father's and sister's name be? It wasn't like that at all. But for some reason, that lady needed to hear that. And so Spirit put in my mind to say those words. At another time, I was giving a lecture to a large holistic health group in Pennsylvania. And I told this story about this day that I went into 7-Eleven to get some potato chips. And the moment I told the story, I thought, well, that was weird. These health food people don't want to hear about Lay's potato chips. I thought it was a silly error. After the lecture, this fella came up to me. He was kind of a well-known healer in that area. He said, I'm so glad you talked about potato chips. He says, I'm a health food addict. And he said, occasionally I binge out on junk food. So the fact that you eat potato chips occasionally was healing to me. I'm healed. And on a more serious note, I used to work on an organic farm in New York State. And one day I was about to drive a dump truck through this small town in New York. And this voice said to me very clearly, slow down, because there's going to be a couple kids who run in front of the truck. And it was so compelling that I slowed down to just a few miles an hour. And just as I was about to enter the town, sure enough, these two little kids who were playing on a lawn beside the house, beside the road, just ran into the road. And thank God I was able to stop easily. There was no problem. But who gave me that guidance? And I think it was the Holy Spirit. Unfortunately, I was open to listen and act on it. And we are all receiving guidance all the time. No, I'm not special. Every single person, every single human being has access to station KGOD. But you have to have your tuner lined up so that you're on the right frequency. If you're not listening, you won't get it. If you're on a different frequency, you'll miss it. So we don't get to complain. We don't get guidance. We just have to sensitize ourselves more to the information that could be helpful. be helpful. How do you do that? You meditate, you pray, you relax, you walk in nature, do your music, you do creativity. Anything that either relaxes you or calms you or raises your vibration to a state of joy puts you in a far more receptive state to receive the guidance you need. Now, this guidance will also create success. It's a wonderful thing that God does not just leave us to figure it out on the earth. Great Spirit wants us to be successful in the world. It will give us specific guidance as to how to manifest the things that we want, whether it's money or health or a relationship or a job or some form of creativity. So one of my books was published by Hampton Roads Publishing, and they're the same publisher that published Conversations with God. So I was visiting the warehouse one time, and Bob Friedman, who was the president, was showing me around the warehouse. And he said, well, a couple of years ago, I received a manuscript from a guy who had been homeless. And then he claimed that God was talking to him. I thought, nobody's going to read this. So I threw it in the wastebasket. And my daughter, who worked in the office at the time, picked it out of the wastebasket and she took it home. And she said, Dad, this is really good. You have to publish this. So I did. And it turned out to be Conversations with God. And he showed me this warehouse filled with Neil's books and other books. And he said, this is the house that Neil built. So in that particular case, the daughter was serving as the person in the little black box, telling her dad what would work. Now, on an even more massive level, we all know J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter series, and she sent her manuscript to like a dozen publishers. They all went thumbs down on it. And one of them was not really interested in the book, but he took it home because he thought his 8-year-old daughter might like to look at it. And she said, Dad, she says, you must publish this. He said, no, it's not good. He said, nobody makes money on children's books. She said, Dad, this is a really good book. So he published Harry Potter. And we all know what happened after that. It became a mega series and movies, and it changed lots of lives. And in that particular case, the 8-year-old daughter was serving as the person in the little black box. And real guidance is innocent and it's simple. I think it's really interesting that in the two cases of the books I mentioned, that there were young people and there were women, which represents the feminine intuitive in many cases. And so guidance is innocent and it's simple. And it's not logical, it's not rational. You do not think up guidance. It comes in gentle, sometimes humorous, sometimes often unexpected ways. And Jesus said, a little child shall lead them. And I think that's metaphorical for the little child within us who remains in touch with God and is giving our intellectual self help to fill in the blanks that the intellect cannot master by itself. And one final point, you have to be humble to receive guidance. Even the Dalai Lama, the great spiritual leader of a great religion of our time, he is humble enough to say, well, I know pretty much English, but not perfectly. So I'm actually willing to have somebody help me. And I think a lot of us get into trouble because we're not willing to receive help. But, if the Dalai Lama is willing to receive help and go on international live stream YouTube, and he doesn't make believe he's perfect in English. He's willing to have a guy in a room off to the side fill in the blanks for what he doesn't know. So that's a wonderful model that every human being needs help from a higher power. And if the Dalai Lama can receive help, so can you and I. And we all have a little black box, metaphorically speaking. There's always someone who's willing to give us what we don't have and to fill in the blanks and to help us succeed spiritually, especially in the areas of creativity and service and healing. And if your intention is pure, as the Dalai Lama's intention is, then you will absolutely be given everything you need to know to accomplish your mission as a person, as a teacher, and as a healer.